What's up, Rangers Nation? It's Alex Blink with Dallas Sports Fanatic. Welcome to Texas Rangers Fanatic Podcast, episode 10. Yes, we're in the double digits for episode, and I am joined by myself. With the trade deadline going on, I figure it's going to be riding solo for this episode. But as always, getting more and more guests to come to kind of go over this 2020 season and what's the outlook. But today, mostly, we're just going to break down the trade deadline and what's upcoming. Per reports, the Rangers and the Astros will play this week, despite the one-person COVID outbreak that happened over the weekend with the Oakland Athletics. The A's and Mariners series has been postponed till Thursday, but the Rangers and Astros are good to go. Major League Baseball did give the green light, so the Rangers will play Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Houston, and so far the Rangers, no postponements due to COVID. They had the one postponement last week between them and Oakland, where the Rangers and the A's decided not to play due to outside events. But here we are on the day after the trade deadline, and what a deadline it was. What a deadline day. It's almost like New Year's Eve, waiting for the clock to strike midnight and waiting for the clock to strike 3 o'clock Central Time, especially knowing that the Rangers have had a reputation of making last-second deadline deals. They did make a few last-second deadline deals, or at least they made a couple of deals with one team, and that's kind of how it spread out. We will talk about the Rangers and Mets being trade partners, as well as the Rangers and the Athletics being trade partners. Or let's kind of go over that first. So the deals that were actually made. Texas made 3 deals yesterday. The first one was the deal that sent Mike Minor to the Oakland Athletics. That deal happened right around, I would say, about 11:30 Central Time. The Rangers sent Mike Minor to the Oakland Athletics for a couple of players to be named later, and the players to be named later were indeed named later. The 2 players that were named later were Marcus Smith, who was a third-round pick in 2018 for Oakland, and Dustin Harris, an 11th-round pick in 2009, so last year for the Oakland Athletics. Looking at a bit of the scouting, Melissa Lockhart, who covers the Oakland Athletics for The Athletic, she's gotten a chance to kind of look at both players. So in questions via Twitter yesterday, her analysis is that she does like both prospects, so it's a very good return for Mike Minor. Smith has great speed. He's a good hitter. He handles the ball well. You play center field. Meanwhile, Harris can really hit. He just needs to develop some power, and he's a corner, either a third base or a first baseman. So all in all, it seems like the Rangers got a positive return back for Mike Minor, who is only going to be with the club 1 month, and considering Minor has really struggled this year, I will say this. I think his last start against the Dodgers, against a team that had not been shut or had been shut out only once through 6 innings all season before Friday, the fact that Mike Minor dominated that Dodgers lineup, that may have given the Rangers a little bit of extra back. I don't know if they would have gotten these 2 guys unless he had performed on Friday against Los Angeles. That's my viewpoint on it. I didn't think you were going to get much from Mike Minor anyway. I did have a feeling he was going to be dealt, but I was thinking like Minor being sent away for maybe one player, one low-level prospect. So I really do think the Rangers did come out plus on Mike Minor. And again, we all know what happened last year in 2019 during trade deadline. Mike Minor was one of the more coveted starters, and no trigger was pulled. But the trigger was pulled this year. Meanwhile, the Rangers had a couple of trade partners with the Mets. They made 2 deals in a span of a few minutes. And that was just kind of the way it was. They had multiple offers. So John Daniels talked about this yesterday. They had multiple offers for Todd Frazier. But ultimately the Mets came in and they were trade partners with the Mets. And then they already had a deal with Robinson Chirinos put in place. So the fact that it was 2 separate deals that were within a few minutes was just coincidence. But basically the Rangers are getting 3 players to be named later from the Mets. They are also, because I'm kind of going over this because it kind of spewed out throughout the early evening. So the Rangers are receiving 2 players to be named later. The Mets will get $358,209 in the deal involving the Rangers, plus an additional $1 million if Todd Frazier's $5,575,000 option for 2021 is declined, which would cover the cost of his $1 million buyout. So Frazier did have a club option next year, which is why I was a little curious to see if Frazier would stick around or not. But Todd Frazier's going back to the New York Mets, and based on Mets fans' reactions, they love it. Todd Frazier's a great guy. It's just unfortunate that I didn't kind of have a face-to-face discussion with him. He seemed like the type of guy that you could just chill and talk to. But Todd Frazier going back to the Mets, and I hope to, when the Mets come to Arlington next time, or wherever Frazier goes, if his options declined for 2021, wherever he goes to, Frazier keeps playing. He's going to be – I hope that past retirement that Frazier becomes a coach, because he's going to be a really good coach. I think he's going to be a really good coach. But those were the deals that the Rangers made. I am a little surprised. Well, maybe I'm not as surprised to see Shin-Soo Choo still a Texas Ranger. I thought maybe they could get one player, one low-level prospect, and I thought maybe a team would be willing to get a left-handed bat to lead off, because Shin-Soo Choo is a really good leadoff hitter statistically, especially to begin the game. But I think obviously age and injuries, it was probably a turnoff. I don't know. John Daniels didn't really want to go into further detail outside of Lance Lynn, so he didn't really say whether or not Choo's name was on the table. But I would have, under the same circumstance, say, hey, Choo's available. What can we get from her? But I don't think they were actively trying to trade Choo away. Joely Rodriguez's name was also somebody that could possibly be moved. He stays. Rafael Montero, I don't know, again, how active the Rangers were in whether or not they would trade, but I would have thought maybe Rafael Montero's name would have come up in a few rumors. A righty closer, bullpen help. A lot of teams need bullpen help, so I'm a little bit shocked that Rafael Montero's name wasn't mentioned once, or maybe it would have been mentioned, just no traction happens. Who knows? Rougned Odor's name came up in a possible contract exchange with the Boston Red Sox. There was talk from Evan Grant that the Red Sox and the Rangers were trying to do a contract exchange with the Red Sox Nathan Eovaldi and the Rangers Rougned Odor, but that didn't really go anywhere. Honestly, I think that, Eovaldi is already on the injured list, so he wouldn't have been eligible to come back, I believe. I would have to check to see when it was retro too, but he was placed on the injured list 3 days before the deadline. So I'm guessing that created some complications, and I don't think that had any traction one way or the other to see if the Red Sox and Rangers were actually going to pull that off. Joey Gallo's name was interesting. I'll be honest with you guys, when that news broke on Sunday that the Raiders were willing to trade Joey Gallo, I was stunned. I was stunned. And then I started thinking about it more and more. First of all, I said this all day yesterday and previously on Sunday. The Rangers, anybody's available during the trade deadline for a team like Texas who is not only not competitive this year, but on paper, they don't look competitive for the next few years. So I think the Rangers' idea is, hey, Joey Gallo, let's put him out there. Let's see what teams are willing to give for Joey Gallo. And especially considering Gallo's not having a good year, let's see what we can get. I think, honestly, according to, I think the Braves, when there was talk about Joey Gallo, it wasn't, actually it's not the Braves, it was some unknown team. So they were talking about the Rangers' Joey Gallo. They said the Rangers were asking for an outfielder off the big league roster, another big leaguer, and high-end prospects. But I think teams felt like, no, we don't want to do that, considering Gallo's moxie is strikeouts, power. So I didn't think any traction was going to happen with Joey Gallo. But here's the thing. I'm going to say this, and I think the new ballpark plays into play a lot, because one thing we're learning in this new ballpark, it is a gap park, meaning if you can hit it into the left center, right center field gaps down the line, you're going to be successful. But if your moxie is home runs, major power, you're going to have a lot of those long fly balls get knocked down. And I'll be honest, I don't think Joey Gallo is built for this ballpark. I think if the Raiders were still playing at Globe Life Park, Joey Gallo would be a monster there. I would, in a snap of a finger, go for an extension, contract extension. But honestly, I don't think Globe Life Field fits into Joey Gallo's repertoire. I think it's not suited for him, because the ball does not carry at Globe Life Field that well. Now, I think as an outfielder, Joey Gallo's outfield ability really shines in Globe Life Field. I think his right field has been fantastic this year. I could maybe think of, at home, I can't really think of anything on the defensive side where he struggled. I do know maybe a couple instances at Coors Field, but not at home. But I'll tell you what, if I'm a team and I'm looking as far as hitters ballparks, I know the Rays were really interested, and I don't know in Jason Stark when he was tweeting about what the Rangers were looking for Gallo. I don't know if that was the Tampa Bay Rays. But if I'm the Rays, that could be a team where they may inquire, though they're having, as far as offensive production goes this year, their outfielders aren't producing as well. But they would have a force in the outfield when you talk about Kevin Kiermaier, Hunter Renfroe, and Joey Gallo. I mean, those arms, that's ridiculous. I don't know if any other team besides the Rays were inquiring about Joey Gallo, but, I mean, you think about it on the other side, you know, teams like the Yankees, the Phillies, I mean, those are left-handed hitters' paradises. So, I don't know. We'll see what happens in the winter, but I know Joey Gallo is very beloved in the Texas Rangers area. I don't say that you don't take a chance and see if you can get a contract extension at all, because I still think Joey Gallo has yet to hit his prime. But I don't know. I think in the winter, I think the Rangers are going to do the same thing. They're going to pull out the bait. They're going to say, hey, what are you guys willing to give? And who knows? Maybe some team will jump on that, and the Rangers can get a very long-haul return for somebody like Joey Gallo. I do think it's going to create also some complications that when his arbitration and when he hits free agency, extension, or not really extensions, but it's going to be harder to sign him back, especially being a Scott Boras client. And we saw what happened to the last Scott Boras client the Rangers tried to sign. That's Anthony Rendon, where they were specifically saying 7 years, and the only thing the Rangers were offering themselves was 6 years. And even though they were offering more per year, still wanted that 7th year. And that's why he went to the Angels. Angels were willing to do that. Rangers were not. So we'll see when the time comes if Joey Gallo does indeed, if this year's his last or if next year's his last, who knows? Only time will tell, but the big news of the trade deadline from not just the Texas Rangers, but overall Major League Baseball was the lack of dealing for Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn was probably the second biggest starting pitcher on the market next to Mike Clevinger. And I think it's real interesting that Mike Clevinger, and I am 100% without a doubt know that Mike Clevinger was dealt away from Cleveland because of the mishap in Chicago. There's no doubt in my mind, which is a very bold move for the Cleveland Indians and really makes you appreciate the Indians organization. I think a lot of times when a player becomes quote-unquote problematic, that they can kind of get away with anything they want to because of their skill set. You see that a lot. You see that a lot in all major sports. I think baseball, football, and basketball are the three main professionals, MLB, NBA, and NFL, where a player can be as problematic, but man, if he's a superstar, franchise or the club's not going to do anything. They're just going to let him play unless the league steps in and does something. So I think that's very bold of the Cleveland Indians. And look at what happened. They got a lot back from the San Diego Padres. So I'll give it up for the Cleveland Indians. Now, Zach Plesac is starting in his place, who you could argue probably did worse than Mike Clevinger in that situation in Chicago. So it's a mixed bag. I like that the Cleveland Indians are not standing for players who go against their ethics. But I don't know, Zach Plesac starting over Mike Clevenger's spot is a little curious, especially since he was sent down. But at some point, there's a line. And that's why we talk about it, and that's why the Indians have to deal with it. But going back to Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn was one of the more coveted starters. You had a bunch of teams who were looking for starting pitching. Just naming them off the top of my head: Minnesota Twins, Chicago White Sox. I heard New York Yankees. Atlanta Braves were really needing a starting pitcher. I think they've only had one starter that has been successful, and everybody else has either been ineffective or hurt. I think Fried has been the only one that has been successful for the Braves. So the Braves are really looking at starting pitching. And then the Los Angeles Dodgers were a team that was thrown out, who basically could have solidified their World Series this year if they would have acquired Lance Lynn. Or they could have, as a response to what the San Diego Padres did. Padres were another team that was in the possibility before the Clevinger trade. But once the Clevinger trade hits, Padres were no longer in contention for that. Though who knows with A.J. Preller what would have happened. So the Rangers don't trade Lance Lynn. They don't trade Lance Lynn. Based on what John Daniels said yesterday, it was kind of what he was saying about a month ago. In that if we feel that we are not getting what we feel is the worth from Lance Lynn. Let me rephrase that because I know that sounded real weird. Basically, they're pulling what they did last year with Mike Minor. They didn't feel like in the deals and in the offers that it was up to what Mike Minor was valued. last year. So they said no go. Same thing with Lance Lynn. They felt like what other teams were offering, they felt it wasn't up to what Lance Lynn's worth. And yes, this is a reoccurring story. This is deja vu over again. Because again, you're banking on Lance Lynn, just like, even though Mike Minor had a struggling start in July, I think teams were still willing to. Because, I can't speak for Mike Minor, but I really do think that the July trade deadline was one of the reasons why Mike Minor struggled in July. So once July is over, then Mike Minor can get back to being his old self. And he had a good August, didn't have a good September. Then, of course, this year he struggled. Lance Lynn, I don't know. Now, for the Rangers, the positive is that you do have Lynn for a very cheap price next year for $8 million. But again, it's deja vu. Lynn's value is as high as it's going to be unless Lynn keeps this going into the winter and then goes into next year and does the same thing he did this year. Maybe his value would increase, but that's a big risk. That is a huge risk, which begs the question, and any team is going to overvalue their players. There would be problems if you didn't overvalue your players. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you're working at a store and you have your employees and you value your employees, you want to overvalue them. You don't want to undervalue them. Maybe that's not the right example, but, if a GM is going to say to his starter and say, oh, well, we value him less than what you're giving us, then that's a problem. So I don't have a problem with John Daniels and the Rangers overvaluing their players, overvaluing Lance Lynn, but there has to be at some point a cap. There has to be at some point where you realize, hey, we may not get exactly what we want back, but what we're getting back is very good. And I don't know exactly what teams were offering. I believe the Atlanta Braves were one team that was really going. I think the Dodgers and the Braves were two teams that were really on that. There was talks going. I know that there was rumors with the Yankees. I didn't hear about any actual talks between the Twins or the White Sox. But according to David O'Brien, who covers the Atlanta Braves for The Athletic, the Braves were talking with the Rangers right up before the trade deadline, and Lance Lynn's price was obviously higher than either Braves or other teams were willing to go. The Rangers were looking for pasture or waters, and the Braves were saying no. And, it's interesting because considering prospects don't have any time to develop, I thought it was interesting to see if teams were willing to just give prospects away. And it looks like with the way this trade deadline was going is that teams were willing to give about middle-of-the-road prospects in quantity. So like in the Padres case, they didn't give up. I think they gave up one in the top 10 as far as prospects go. The kid Trammell went to the Mariners in the Austin Nola deal. And that's it. Padres kept a lot of their main prospects. So I think with the way this deadline was going is you had one blockbuster deal between the Padres and the Indians. Everything else was about medium. I mean, you had some interesting deals. I would say Starling Marte going from Arizona to Miami is another one of those. I wouldn't say it's a blockbuster, but I would say it's a little bit over middle. But everything else was wasn't as surprising. I think if I had to pick, I'm trying to think of what the outside the Clevenger, the craziest deal was. I think the craziest one may have been the fact that uh, the Marlins made two deals in a span of like 5 minutes, to where they traded away and then acquired. But outside of that, I mean, I guess maybe Arizona sending Archie Bradley to the Reds, where the Reds are, I mean, I guess in the National League, even people were talking about the Mets, acquiring Astro in the process of Chirinos and Frazier. But when you look at the way the National League is set up, I mean, the New York Mets, despite being 15-20 on the season, the New York Mets are only 2 games back of a playoff spot. They're 2 games back of the Rockies. And in fact, they're 2.5 games back of second place in the National League East, behind Miami and Philadelphia. It's absolutely insane how the NL, the Nationals at 12-20, are 3.5 games back. So a big winning streak by the Washington Nationals, and boom, they're in a playoff spot. And that's why it seemed like the Rangers, who aren't as lucky because the Blue Jays are 3 games over 500 and they're in the 8th spots. Rangers are 7 games back of the playoff spots, behind Toronto for the 8th seed, and they still have to climb 4 teams: Detroit, Baltimore, Seattle, and Kansas City. But yeah, I mean, that's why, as far as people were looking at the Mets being 5 under, and yet they're making a deal, why not? But going back to Lance Lynn, look, there's no way of knowing if this was a bad or a good decision. We look at the Mike Minor situation, and now we know that it was a bad decision, but we had to wait a year later to figure that out. There's no way of knowing what the Rangers' plans are going to be. Do I think that they're going to extend Lance Lynn? Probably not. I don't see that in the future, but who knows? So when Lynn's contract is up at the end of next year, are they going to give him an extension? Probably not. But again, there's no way of really knowing if this deal would happen. Going back to Mike Minor last year, who knows what prospects the Rangers were going to get from Mike Minor? And would all of those been a bust? What prospects were the Rangers were going to get for Lance Lynn? If they take that deal, what if none of those work out? Then that deal's a bust. In the winter, if they get something better, or next year's deadline, what they get back. Who knows? Maybe one of these 2 prospects that the Rangers got, maybe either Smith or Harris from Oakland, turns into a star. I mean, the likelihood of that happening isn't too great, but you never know. You have no idea. And that's why when you look at this year's or even past year's trade deadlines, it's so difficult to pinpoint, well, the Rangers completely failed. Did they fail? How can you make that assessment? You're making that assessment based on Lance Lynn now, but you don't know what you would have gotten back. And you don't know what Lance Lynn's future holds. So I think there's no way of knowing as of September 1st, a day after the trade deadline, to see. And who knows? Maybe the San Diego Padres completely, everybody's saying that they won the deadline. Maybe things don't work out. You never know. There's no way on paper, and there's no way of evaluating the eye test that the San Diego Padres are going to fail. But everything else happening in 2020, let's say this. Did you wake up on New Year's Day thinking that 8 months later we would be in this situation? In a 60-game season or a trade deadline happening on August 31st? and with no fans continuing to be in the stands for the first 30, 40, 50 games, and with possibility of fans not being in the stands in 2021, I certainly didn't wake up on January 1st, 2020 thinking that. I'm sure none of you did. So I think when you realize it's so difficult to pinpoint this, and again, it's the same thing as like mock drafts. NFL mock drafts, they're fun, yes, but I think people invest way too much on that. People invest way too much on mock drafts. People invest way too much on drafts themselves. Baseball drafts, NBA drafts, NHL drafts, MLB drafts. Like, yes, it's a fun game to play, and it's great for the player that gets drafted. And yes, first-round picks typically tend to be successful, but it's almost impossible to pinpoint that they're always going to be successful or they'll be a bust. I think that's how you have to look at it. If I were to look at how the Rangers dealt with the trade deadline, I would say yes, it would have made more sense for them to deal Lance Lynn. Do I think that it's a complete failure? No, I don't. Do I think it was a complete success? No, I don't. I have no evidence to back up either one of those two claims. So it's a wait and see moment. Let's see what happens further along at the end of this month, going into next year, going into trade deadline 2021, and to the future. Rangers on paper have some players who have had success in their careers. Nick Solak, a very successful last couple of months last year. He's doing well at home. Isaiah Connor-Falefa. We've seen Elvis Andrus start off 2019 strong. He should be back with the club on Tuesday. Joey Gallo had a great start to his 2019. We're seeing what Leody Taveras can do. Jose Trevino's starting to blossom behind the plate. Now he's going to get a lot more time with Chirinos going to the Mets. That could have been one of the reasons why that deal with the Mets was strung. And the Rangers felt, hey, we have three catchers. No offense to Jeff Mathis, but I don't think really anybody going to want Jeff Mathis in a deal. So the Rangers decide, hey, and that I would think that Chirinos deal was strictly reputation, because offensively Chirinos has not had much production at all. And I wish the best for Robinson Chirinos. I'm sad to see that his second tenure with the Rangers ended so quickly and not the way he would have wanted. He's a really good guy. And I hope he finds success with the New York Mets. And who knows, maybe he'll sign again for the third time with the Rangers. Who knows? But, and then starting rotation-wise, now you continue to have Lynn. Colby Allard was very good his last time out. Kyle Gibson has been iffy, but he has shown signs of success. Rangers still need to figure out what they want to do with Jordan Lyles. And now Kyle Cody's going to get a shot, which is bringing into the next piece that the Rangers are going to, again, none of these moves have been announced yet, but they are looking to bring up Eli White, Anderson Tejeda. Kyle Cody is going to be starting. John King should be coming up shortly. Elvis Andrus and Brett Morton are going to be activated. And now things get interesting because Rudin Odor is put on the injured list. That hasn't been official yet, but his eye hasn't improved. So that more than likely is going to move Solak to second, I would think, unless they want to give Anderson Tejeda some work. Now, I don't know what the new alignment's going to be and what this lineup is going to look like. But I would think, and this may be a little bit of clarification coming up, but Nick Solak may be better at second base than he is in the outfield. He's got good range, but his arm strength isn't quite there. And I think when you have, because the Rangers are really high on Eli White, as they should. I mean, I think Eli White, he's received some raving reviews. So think about the combination of Tavares, White, and Gallo in the outfield. Man, that is strong. So now you look at, add that to the mix, and I think Solak gets shifted to second. Now, where does that leave Rougned Odor? And we're talking about when he comes off the injured list, I don't know. Elvis Andrus then looking like he's going to come back from the injured list, so he'd be stapled at short. Isaiah Kiner-Falefa moves back to third, and now you give Ronald Guzman a chance at first. First base is interesting too, because now that Frazier's gone and Danny Santana's on the injured list, Guzman's your main guy at first, and it'll be interesting to see who he platoons with. You'd have to see if somebody else gets some work at first base. Right now, I mean, maybe Solak had some work at first base. Scott Heineman had some work at first base last year. I don't know. That's a little interesting rearranging that the Rangers are going to have to go. I'd say, based on the reviews of Eli White, he is going to be outfielder. And then, of course, you have Shin-Soo Choo as your DH. But Rangers are going to start a 3-game series in Houston. It'll be the first of 10 games. You heard me right. 10 games in 26 days between the Rangers and Astros. Think about that. 10 games in 26 days. And then imagine if this series wasn't going to happen. Then you're even going to condense that more. But we will see what happens with the Rangers and Astros. Houston fighting for a playoff spot. Rangers still have those 10 games with the Astros. So the Rangers have 27 games left. They've got 10 against Houston. They still have 4 against Oakland. I believe 7 against the Angels, 4 against Seattle, and 2 against Arizona. And that's it. Season over. Season is kaput. So they are done with the National League West outside 2 against Arizona. And I thought Saturday's game was close to being winnable against the Dodgers. Sunday's game clearly wasn't, though it could have been, given in the bottom of the 3rd inning, the Rangers had a chance against Gonsolin. But I thought maybe after Friday's game, the team would have found some momentum for the weekend, but that's been the story. You win one game, it's your best game of the year, and there's no momentum going into the next day. The only time that's happened is during their winning streak or during the span where they swept the Angels, took 2 of 3 from Seattle, and took 2 of 3 from Colorado. That's it. Outside of that, there's been no real consistency between this team. I don't know what the plans are going to be holding for the Texas Rangers. Are they, because there's some veterans on this team, do you think the lack of fans? Do you think the lack of, I don't know, the situation we're in right now, does that get to them? I don't know. Maybe the club will perform better in a new ballpark with fans. Who knows? The next time fans head to Globe Life Field, will Lance Lynn be a Ranger? Will Joey Gallo be a Ranger? I don't know. But I do know one thing. These guys are Rangers at least for the month of September. And then when the winter meetings start, things could get dicey. Things will get really dicey. 27 games to go in the month of September. Oh, Ranger fans. I guess football starts in about a week from the Sunday before Labor Day. Who knows what's going to happen with that? NFL comes strong. Mavs season ends. Stars still need one win to make the Western Conference Finals, either against Vegas or Vancouver. Stars right now are the team to look at, but I'm still here for you for Rangers coverage, so that hasn't changed. So if you want to listen to this podcast or any other podcast, obviously it'll be up on YouTube like it usually is, but you can also listen to this on Anchor. It is also available on Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public. And for coverage throughout the month of September, going into the off-season to next year, you can follow me on Twitter at APlinkTX for just random pictures. Sometimes at the ballpark, I'll have pictures up there. You can follow me on Instagram at APlinkTEX for Rangers coverage. You go to Dallas Sports Fanatic /Texas Rangers. And I also, if you want stuff that I put out there, it is also available on my Twitter bio. Ranger fans, again, it's September. We got 1 month to endure of this 2020 season, and hopefully we can start from scratch in 2021. Trade deadline, as much as some felt it was a bust, it was a fun trade deadline coverage. Appreciate everybody that reached out. It was a fun day. And I also feel old as crap being 29, and now I'm starting to go through a 30 crisis. You know, that crisis you hit when you realize that you're turning 30 in less than 365 days. Rangers Nation, enjoy and stay safe, everybody.